I erased a man's entire existence in this country using nothing but a beige plastic telephone and a dial tone. No blood, no police, just a catastrophic, silent execution. He put his hands on my friend. So, I took away his future, his education, and his legal right to stay in the United States. And the best part? He never even knew it was me. Welcome to another file from the dark side of human psychology. If you crave stories where karma isn't just a waiting game, but a highly calculated weapon, hit that subscribe button right now. Join our community of alternative justice seekers. We don't forgive. And we definitely do not forget. Let me take you back to the before times. The late 90s. The internet was still a baby. It was a wild west of dial-up modems, bulky glowing CRT monitors, and systems that ran on blind trust rather than digital footprints. Today, if you breathe near a computer, you leave a trace. Privacy laws like FERPA will lock you in a federal prison if you try what I did. But back then, you could be a ghost in the machine. I was a college student. I had just moved into a cheap, cramped apartment with my girlfriend. Let's call her Lucy. The place always smelled a little bit like cheap coffee and old wood, but it was ours. To save our sanity and our wallets, we hosted game nights. We'd invite friends over, order greasy takeout, and sit on the worn-out carpet playing board games until 2 a.m. One night, Lucy invited a girl from her psychology class. Let's call her Sarah. Surprisingly, Sarah and I actually went to the same high school. We weren't best friends back then, but we shared that easy, unspoken bond of familiar faces. Sarah was genuinely sweet. The kind of person who always apologized even when someone else bumped into her. She had this bright, naive energy. Naturally, that kind of light attracts the darkest kinds of shadows. A few weeks later, Sarah started bringing her new boyfriend to our game nights. Let's call him Jay. From the second Jay walked into my living room, the air pressure changed. Have you ever met someone who doesn't just enter a room, but actively drains the oxygen out of it? That was Jay. He didn't smile. He didn't make eye contact. He just stood by the door, scanning the room like he was evaluating threats. He was a walking, breathing red flag. When we played games, he wouldn't participate. He'd just sit in the corner chair, arms crossed, staring at Sarah with this cold, dead expression. He was entirely standoffish. It was a classic narcissistic isolation tactic. He wanted her to feel guilty for having fun. He wanted to ruin the vibe so she would eventually stop wanting to come over. There was no chemistry between them. It was pure, suffocating control. We all hated him. We all felt that heavy, awkward silence when he was around. But we kept inviting him, just to be polite to Sarah. That was our first mistake. Politeness is often a predator's best camouflage. Luckily, Jay only showed his face 2 or 3 times. After that, he always found an excuse to stay away. I thought we were in the clear. I thought he was just a miserable guy who liked to be miserable alone. I was dead wrong. A month passed. The weather got colder. I remember I was sitting on our cheap thrift store sofa when the landline phone rang. It was late. A ringing phone past 11 p.m. never brings good news. Lucy picked it up. Within seconds, her face dropped. All I could hear through the thick plastic receiver was heavy, uncontrollable sobbing. It was Sarah. She was hyperventilating, begging to come over. We said yes immediately. 10 minutes later, Sarah was standing in our doorway, shaking like a leaf. Her eyes were red and swollen. The story she told us made the blood in my veins turn to ice. Jay's mask had finally slipped completely. His quiet control had mutated into aggressive paranoia. He started accusing Sarah of cheating on him. It was textbook gaslighting. He never clarified who he thought she was cheating with, me, Lucy, or both of us. It didn't matter. It was a delusion designed to break her down. He backed her into a corner in his apartment and started verbally assaulting her, tearing her down, calling her names I won't even repeat here. When she panicked and tried to push past him to the door, he shoved her. He shoved her hard. Sarah tripped backward over a heavy wooden coffee table. She crashed down onto the floor. She showed Lucy the bruise later. Lucy told me it was massive. Deep purple, turning sickly yellow at the edges, covering her lower back and tailbone. Sarah sat on my couch, crying into a mug of tea, swearing up and down that he had never hit her before. She kept saying it was just an accident. He was just angry. She was making excuses for her abuser. I wasn't going to make excuses. I was pissed. I am a very big guy. 6'3", heavy build. I could have driven over to Jay's apartment, kicked his door off the hinges, and beaten the absolute crap out of him. The thought crossed my mind. My fists were clenched so hard my knuckles were white. But I'm not a violent person. Violence is messy. Violence gets the police involved. Violence makes you the bad guy. I didn't want to break his jaw. I wanted to break his entire reality. To understand what I did next, you need to understand the stakes. You see, Jay wasn't an American citizen. He was an international student. If you are an international student in the United States, you are here on a very strict F1 student visa. The golden rule of the F1 visa is simple: you must maintain full-time enrollment. Usually, that means taking at least 12 credit hours per semester. If you drop below that number without a valid medical excuse, the university system automatically flags your file. That flag is sent directly to the Department of Homeland Security and Immigration. Your visa is canceled. You become an illegal alien overnight. And you get deported. Jay's entire existence in this country depended on his class schedule. And his class schedule was sitting in a database that I had full access to. I worked as a student employee in the main administration building of the college. I sat behind a high counter, staring at a glowing green MS-DOS terminal all day. As part of my job, I had God-level access to the student information system. I could see anyone's records, their grades, their fees, their addresses, their class schedules. The timing was poetic. It was the final week of the drop/add period. In college, this is a very strict deadline. It's the last possible day you can add or drop a class without severe financial and academic penalties. After that clock strikes midnight, the system locks you in. You can't change anything without special permission from the dean. I waited until Friday afternoon. The office was mostly empty. The only sound was the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead and the quiet click-clack of keyboards. I looked Jay up in the system. I found his student ID number. 9 digits. That was all his life amounted to. 9 little digits. I wrote them down on a yellow sticky note. Now, I couldn't do this on the computer. Even in the 90s, the system logged which terminal made changes. But there was a loophole. The university had set up a bank of dedicated enrollment phones in a back room for students who didn't want to wait in line. It was an automated, touch-tone voice system. It didn't track IP addresses. It didn't require two-factor authentication. It just asked for your student ID and a 4-digit PIN, which, by default, was almost always your birth year. I had his birth year from his file. I walked into the back room. I picked up the heavy plastic receiver of the landline phone. I heard the dial tone. I typed his ID. Beep, 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 beep. I typed his PIN. Beep, beep. Welcome, Jay, the robotic voice said. I navigated to his schedule. He was enrolled in exactly 15 credits. Safe. Comfortable. To drop a class, press 2. I pressed 2. I entered the code for his calculus class. Class dropped. I entered the code for his biology class. Class dropped. I dropped his history. I dropped his English. Within 60 seconds, I had completely wiped out his entire semester. He was down to 0 credits. But I wasn't finished. Dropping him was just phase 1. If he realized what happened fast enough, he might try to beg his way back in. I needed to build a wall around him. To add a class, press 1. I pressed 1. I went through the course catalog and hunted down every single class that had massive, non-refundable course fees attached to it. I added advanced pottery lab. I added a golf class. I added scuba diving. I racked up hundreds and hundreds of dollars in automated fees on his account. Why? Because university systems have a trigger. If you owe a sudden debt, a financial hold is placed on your account. You cannot request transcripts. You cannot re-enroll. You cannot even talk to an advisor until the balance is paid in full. I had locked him out of his own life and threw away the key. I hung up the phone. I tore the yellow sticky note into tiny pieces and threw it in the trash. I went back to my desk, packed my bag, and went home. The trap was set. Now, I just had to wait for it to snap shut. I never told a soul. Not Lucy. Not Sarah. Not anyone. True ProRevenge only works if you keep your mouth shut. If you brag, you get caught. I didn't check his file again for a long time. But I did get a front row seat to the fallout, relayed directly from Sarah. You see, Sarah had broken up with him the night he pushed her. But they shared a Tuesday morning English literature class. She had been dreading going to that class. She was terrified of seeing him, terrified he would try to corner her in the hallway. Tuesday morning arrived. Sarah walked into the lecture hall. It was a packed class. Jay was there. But he was standing in the back of the room, leaning against the wall, looking confused. Sitting in his usual desk was a brand new student. The professor walked in and started taking roll call. He noticed the extra bodies in the room. He looked down at his official, freshly printed class roster. He called out names. And guess whose name was absolutely nowhere on that list? Jay. Because I had dropped his classes on the final deadline day, the system automatically pulled the next person off the wait list and gave them his seat. Sarah told us that Jay's face turned pale. He stumped down to the front of the room. He started arguing with the professor. He demanded his seat back. But the professor just tapped the clipboard. The paper was official. The paper didn't lie. Jay wasn't on it. There was literally nothing he could do. He was asked to leave the lecture hall so the paying students could learn. Sarah watched him walk out the door. That was the very last time she ever saw him. Lucy and I eventually broke up. Life moved on. I didn't see Sarah much after that. But a few months later, when the dust had truly settled, I found myself sitting in my terminal in the admin building. The office was quiet. Out of pure curiosity, I typed his name into the search bar. I hit enter. His file popped up. The schedule was completely blank. The system showed that all the bogus fee-heavy classes had eventually been purged from non-payment. But he had no other classes on the books. No credits. No activity. No current address. He was gone. I wanted to assume he was kicked out of school and immediately flagged by immigration. I didn't dig deeper to confirm the actual deportation flight, but based on how the visa system works, he had no way out. Either way, Sarah never had to look over her shoulder again. Sometimes, late at night, I think back to that beige plastic phone. I wonder if I was too harsh. I essentially played God with a man's future just because he pushed a girl over a coffee table. I destroyed his education, his finances, and his legal status in one afternoon. But then I remember the deep purple color of that bruise. I remember the terror in Sarah's voice on the phone. And I sleep like a baby. He got exactly what he deserved. You mess with me, fine. But you never, ever put your hands on my friends. Now, I want to hear from you. Did I cross a moral line? I abused my employment access to bypass the law and ruin a man's life. Do you think this was the perfect pro-revenge, or did I go too far and become the villain myself? If you were sitting at that desk in 1998, with a student ID in your hand, what would you have done? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'll be reading them and pinning the most brutal perspective. Don't forget to vote on the community tab poll, and I'll see you in the next psychological deep dive. Stay safe, and watch your digital footprints.